Penguin Random House Audio presents The Next Conversation. Argue less, talk more. This is the author, Jefferson Fisher. For Sierra, who supports me, Jet and Ruby, who inspire me, my siblings, who inspired me first, my parents, who prayed over me, and all who tried that and followed me. There ain't no good guy. There ain't no bad guy. There's only you and me, and we just disagree. Dave Mason, We Just Disagree. Prologue. The worn-out Berber carpet of the old ranch house felt scratchy on my legs. Wearing an oversized shirt and my Spider-Man underwear, I curled up into a ball in the corner of the main room. My hair and skin were still wet from my rushed, unheated shower. I was shivering. I was also grinning, ear to ear. 8-year-old me wasn't going to miss a thing. Everyone was in the main room. The patriarch of my family was my great-grandfather. He was a federal judge. My grandfather, father, first cousins, great-uncles, you name it, were all trial lawyers. Every year, the Fisher men would get together for an opening weekend hunt in the hill country of West Texas. There were 13 joining in total, and for the first time, I made it 14. I felt like I had been called up to the big leagues. Me, finally old enough to go on an 8-hour drive with my dad, listening to James Taylor, Jim Croce, and Jerry Jeff Walker. Me, finally old enough to be around the big boys. I hardly spoke a word, mind you, but it didn't matter. I drank IBC root beer and ate more beef jerky than my mama would ever have allowed. The first night was an experience cemented into my memory. As dinner finished, my grandfather put down his plate and scooted to the edge of his couch seat. He began to tell a story, something about his job, a judge, and a courthouse. I immediately recognized it as the same story he had told my dad earlier that day while we were fixing an old deer blind. Earlier, though, the story was more matter-of-fact. His voice came out plain as he told it while searching for some green paint in his truck bed. But this was special. It was the same words, but it was a very different story. I was entranced, watching as he stood up to reenact the scene. He used his hands and face to give texture to his voice. His volume went up on the exciting parts, low and slow on the intense parts. Even his tone changed. Could this be the same story? He captivated the room for nearly 10 whole minutes. And after a long pause, he delivered the punchline, and the room filled with laughter. I felt as though I had seen a magic show. The end of his story opened the floor to others as, one by one, my cousins, dad, and even my great-grandfather took turns with courtroom stories of their own. As trial lawyers, they were all wonderful storytellers. The laughter went on for hours into the night. I sat there in that corner, transfixed by every story, every word, with my knees tucked up into my sleep shirt. I took it all in until I fell asleep. It was late. My dad carried me off to bed, beef jerky still in my hand. The whole evening for me had been the discovery of something new, yet strangely familiar, as if I had seen it all before. I remember it immediately felt right to me, like a shoe that fit the first time you tried it on. That night, and for the next 10 years of opening weekends, I received my family's inheritance. I passed on identity, dedicated to advocacy through storytelling. I realized with each year gone by that law was only the family profession. Communication was the true family passion. To no one's surprise, I wanted to go to law school and become a trial lawyer. And after practicing for 10 years, I still don't know of any other profession like it. I get hired to handle problems with people I personally don't have problems with. What's more, the opposing party also has their own lawyer, who's getting paid to have problems with me. Every day I go up against people whose primary job is to make sure that I lose. When it comes to a jury trial, the stakes can't be any higher. How I communicate and how I teach my client to communicate can mean the difference between recovering their livelihood and losing it forever. Each case is a new lesson, whether I'm deposing witnesses, cross-examining parties, or giving arguments before a judge or jury. My entire purpose is to run toward conflict. Now, if you're inclined to believe that I learned my communication skills in law school, don't. Law school teaches you how to apply the law, principles of contracts, torts, constitutional law, and state and federal rules of procedure, all important. But you won't sit in a class on how to speak to each other with empathy. You won't hear a lesson on how to diffuse a heated argument. Law school teaches you how to read the law. It doesn't teach you how to read people. I had to learn that part myself. Do you yike it? My sister, Sarah, squealed through her pacifier as she brought me the 5th round of invisible pancakes. As the oldest of 4, I loved being the big brother. By the time I was 13, my bond with my siblings was so strong that they obeyed me almost better than they did my parents. I was like a mother hen wherever we went. And by the time I was 16, I was driving them to school while we were going over their spelling words. Now, to be clear, my parents are loving and wonderful people. I was only as good as I was because they poured so much of themselves into me those first 4 years before my sister was born. I also just truly enjoyed the responsibility of being the big brother. Being the oldest supposedly leads to more emotional stability, initiative, and the like, but for me, it taught me to hone communication fundamentals at an early age. I quickly learned how to acknowledge Sarah by pretending to gobble up the invisible food while smiling and saying, delicious. I found that words of kindness worked better at getting her to open up than words of anger. My younger brother, Jonathan, would say my name repeatedly. They call me Bubba, a Southern term of endearment for the eldest boy, and stammer until he got his sentences out. I learned that if I patiently waited and repeated his words back to him while nodding my head, he felt understood. He also couldn't say his consonants for a long time, only vowels. I naturally became his interpreter, identifying nonverbal mannerisms and foreseeing situations that would frustrate him before they happened. Jacob, my youngest brother, was the most emotionally intense of the 3. He felt his emotions big, quickly losing his temper. I figured out that if I slowed my words and lowered my voice, so would he. And I learned to let him feel his feelings without me taking them personally. That sometimes a hug said more than any words I could say. Each sibling had a unique personality that took a special approach, a special touch, to connect with them on a deeper level. One of the most critical skills that I developed as the oldest was my ability to mediate and resolve conflict. If 2 of my siblings began arguing over our sister's Polly Pocket, I'd quickly stop the yelling, have them each give their side of the story, and then make the judgment call on whose turn it was and what the compromise would be. And it worked. I became proficient at teaching my siblings how to communicate their needs, as well as understand the needs of one another. Serving as the role model for communication between my siblings was daily life. Now married with 2 kids of my own, it's still daily life. I've been the communicator in every phase, every relationship, every friend group. Or maybe you think it's just a knack for talking. I know it to be something more. Every night, as I was growing up, my dad sat on the edge of my bed, leaned over, and whispered, "Dear God, give Jefferson wisdom and always be his friend." I believe in the power of prayer, and I believe that without my parents' prayer, you wouldn't be reading this book. In 2020, I'm a partner at a prestigious defense firm, but despite this achievement, I was professionally depressed. I always came back to the same metaphor. I felt like I was running with a parachute. I was billing and working cases, yes, but creatively, I was getting nowhere. To make things harder, my dad worked at the same firm. When I first told him that I had thoughts of going off on my own, let's just say it didn't go well. Honestly, it didn't go well for the next 20 conversations, and even up to when I announced it to the firm.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?